Okay, good. Yeah, welcome from us, me and Jon as well. Yeah, we had a longer break, so it's nice to be back. And today we want to talk about the chapter 9 in of Jon's book, and it's about great movement wood. And as Raheen said, yeah, there have been questions, and we'll incorporate them into the chat. But I would like to start with just this overall principle of great movement wood, and of course, yeah, it fits nicely. It's springtime, and springtime is wood, and we've also have Easter coming up. So and Easter is this time of hope. Um, And I also, I don't know if it's mentioned in your book, but you also mention love as an emotion related to great movement wood or wood in general. So can you tell us your thoughts about that, love and hope?
Yeah, that's the core of great movement wood, indeed, both of them. Um, well, where to start? The hope is something which comes up lately in this world quite often. Um, I get. Can you turn off your mic? Who is this? Ava. Thank you. Um, so it comes up quite often, the idea of hope, since we have this kind of chaotic world. Um, and um, how do I approach this? Hope in the Western sense is something which is related to the future, that we hope that things will change. And we hope for the best, or we hope that we get more or get less from of something, or something like that. Um, and that's not in Chinese medicine. I would like to discuss this concept of hope and love more um, in a different concept, in the concept of constitutional acupuncture.
Hmm.
Let me go to the Hun. You can see this, don't you?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. I
Or
don't
I
look
can,
at the
yeah.
waiting room anymore, so if you look at the waiting room, that will be nice. We have three Hun. Um, they they work together in cooperation, like that's a concept. A violinist and cellist, or they work together. They always work together. They are together. But you can there's to see the difference. Like there's one more with doing with movement, one more with empathetic communication, and one more I called it intuitive communication. But you can give it different names if you like to. Um, and I think it's important to look at these. The first Hun, like we see here, the kinetic communication, the movement communication. This, and I come back to hope, Hun. I come back to hope
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
love. But this moving part of the three Hun is housed in the lower Dantian. And in the lower Dantian, you see that there's more the Jing, and so the first Hun is most physically orientated. And some people say the Hun go back to heaven after you died, but there are also scriptures where they describe that this Hun and even the second Hun stay here on earth, especially the first Hun. There's quite a lot of discussion about it, but often they say it actually this one also stays here as it is involved in pleasures, in desires, in wanting, in well, having passions to do something, having passions of love to someone else. Um, it is involved, as I wrote down here, with growth and procreation. It's very instinctive, actually, like the Po are very instinctive. So this part of the Hun is also quite instinctive. And the second one has to do is with communication as we do now. We use that hun. Although this is we are on several parts in this world, this hun knows that we are part of the same network, we could say. Not the internet network, but there's a network of people, of beings, of living entities. That's also part of this second hun, but it is also into relations, like then when we meet or we feel for each other or there's an emotion to someone else, that's also part of the second hun. And this is very important because this hun sometimes is said goes back to heaven. And there are also scriptures where they say that it could come back on earth again, like the part of Chinese thought which is influenced by India, where they talk about karma. They say when there's bad karma, it's possible that this hun comes back, this part of the hun comes back, and is united then with the third one, again here on earth. And on earth, you get a different second hun even. But this is the relationship people have with others. Um, this is a very important one because I wrote here, and that's not the only sentence, but an impairment of this hun causes reduced sense of shame, or conversely, an intense sense of shame. Shame is a part of this second hun which we don't see often. We don't like to look at our shame, um, and therefore we project it outwards that we need someone else to help us out or to give us hope, um, like a god or a guru or a teacher or a father or mother or someone else who gives us hope, or even the future. Maybe we can get something new or find something new. There is a very, that I would like to say now, there's a very good distinction to make in hope, because hope related to the po is instinctive. So when we are physically or real threatened, there's an abuse or there's a real threatening of war or like somebody wants to take your life or something like that. That's really the po is involved. We'd like to defend the being, defend ourselves. In the hun, it's different. The hun is more related to your emotions, through your to your psychological development, to intuitive development, you maybe spiritual development. I don't know how you want to call it. So when we talk about suffering from an hun perspective is different from the po perspective. From the po perspective, it's really physically threatening, and that can lead to suffering. In the hun aspect, it's more to do with the psychological suffering, and that can also be very threatening, but there we still have a choice. We have a choice to do something with that. And especially that sense of shame is important because we don't look at that. It's often hidden. Shame hides itself. Even when we are in contact with shame, it hides it again. So we don't look at it. So when we are ashamed of that we're actually not good enough or that well, whatever you can think of, is a very strong incentive for action in many people. And so the second one, the over social interaction can come from the shame that you're alone, that you feel alone and you don't want to look at that, or you feel minor and you don't want to look at that. And that leads to more interaction. So that's you could easily talk a lecture about second hun, but for now, this is, I think, enough. And then the third hun, that is the hun from heaven, you could say, that always goes back to heaven. And that has to do with your, let's say, how intuitive you are and how you are related to something which is, let's say, a higher aspect of the self and has to do with your self-development and how you connected to that higher aspect. Now, these three hun are important for hope. Because the first hun, when we think about it, the pleasures, the hope is related to do I get more pleasures or less pleasures? So it has to do with how do you call it? It's also kind of instinctive, nearly instinctive part of the Hun, and it is related to the future. A Hun related to, sorry, hope related to the future is something which is not from a Taoistic perspective, is not from a, even not from a Confucianist perspective, but especially not from a Taoistic perspective. I will come to that. The Hun, they house in the liver, as you know. And in my book, I describe the liver axis. And the liver axis starts in liver 3 and then goes up to some people say liver 8, and then it goes to the abdomen, CV2, 3, 4. That's the area where we anchor, root ourselves into our being. I don't want to discuss these points now, but that's really rooting the person, the individual, into its own being. So that's then you can say I'm an individual. And then this liver axis goes up through the diaphragm, passes through the heart and the lungs, and goes to governor 20. But this area of the diaphragm and the heart and the lungs, that area, that middle area, that is governed by the acupuncture points liver 13 and liver 14. And now I come to the aspect of hope. Liver 13, the name of liver 13 is Zhang Meng, which is the camphor door, they call that, or the gate of order, or the door of shelter. Now go back to your to the idea that we have shame. Yeah, the door of shelter is that we keep that away. It gives you a feeling of disorder. Yeah, when there is a lot of shame, and so what happens is that the gate of order, liver 13, can bring back that order. But why is it called camphor wood door? Because camphor is used in people who died. So it has a name which has to do with death. And you can't say that death opens up hope. That's not how it is. But death is not meant just a death of spirit or body, but it is like that we don't react anymore. We stop reacting. It's like when we look at the first Hun, the physical, the pleasures, the wanting, the desires, the second Hun that we need communication. We are group people. We need to be in groups. So that action to want to be part of a group has also to do with action outside and reaction outside, that you want to do something, to have something. Now, this liver 13 name implies that we wait, we are still, we see what's happening, and we don't react anymore. We look inside. So, what is the reason that I want to be with others? What's the reason for this pleasure I have for whatever you can think of? That I want to be fulfilled in doing games or to eat a lot or to drink a lot or to be with people a lot or anything you can think of. What is the core feeling inside that leads to that passion? Liver 13, the word Camphor Door said, calm down the ego, as we call it in the West, but calm down your reactions and see inside why, not why, where does it come from that I have the feeling of doing this? Yeah. So you read here on the fourth bullet point, people can feel blocked while they still feel like doing something. Yeah. That's they want to do something, but they can't. And so you look inside, what's the reason I feel so blocked? Or the reason that I want to do so much? So this liver 13 is a point where it's used for stagnation, etc., but it's also, the name implies that it is helping people to look inside and not react so much. That is the behavior we actually could master ourselves, not to react immediately, but to look where does it come from, and from there hope can start. Because liver 14 is called the gate of hope. Liver 14 is a point where the Hun, when we die, goes up to governor 20 and leaves the body. But in spiritual development, liver 13 is the area where we calm down our reaction, and then hope is waiting for us. It's not that you can reach out for hope. That's part of the pull. That is a reaction. You want to have a different circumstance. That is needed when we are physically threatened. Psychologically, the gate of hope opens when we stop reacting. That when something really bad happens in our life, um, when something bad happens into our life, you can think, okay, I want to have it different. Why do you want to have it different? What's the background of it? Are you alone? Are you afraid to face your fears, to face your insecurity, and really feel that leads to hope. And that is related to the Great Movement Wood because the Great Movement Wood is not wood as anger, not even wood as that you love another person, but it is a life-giving energy, life-giving chi, which is called love. It has no opposite. You can't describe love only by describing where it's not.
Mm.
Being in
So,
love,
Jon,
wonderful, of loving people, wonderful, but that's not the love of the Great Movement Wood. And love and hope are in that sense quite connected. So when you face your fears and and accept them or reconcile that you have shame or you have fear or you feel insecure, and you can really be compassionate to that, then it's possible that hope opens up. And hope is not from the future, but it gives you a feeling of more freedom while everything still is chaotic. But it is an internal process of accepting the situation as it is. Don't want to change it, but it gives you hope that you can be part of it. And it frees yourself. Blaming other people, blaming situation, cages yourself. And it's my experience that when you reconcile with circumstances, then it's possible to feel free, even that you feel horrible during illness or during war or during separation or anything like that. And still, there is hope.
so is just to summarize that in a few sentences. So is what you're saying that hope is the discovery of love inside of oneself again. So
Yes,
we have love is always available, but we might not be connected to it. And hope, and through maybe through the Great Movement Wood, but certainly through the Hun, we have the possibility to reconnect with that, with love, or the inside of ourselves, not outside of ourselves.
especially not outside. It's something, the only thing we can do when something happens is um, we don't, we like to control the outside world. And I
Mm,
know that, and I do that the same. But the only possibility you have is go inside and look inside and see where you can find yourself. And what I said, looking at the things which are hidden inside yourself
mm,
gives you the opportunity to free yourself. And even it doesn't say that you forgive other people in that sense, or you can still blame situations, but it
mm.
opens up and it frees yourself.
Um, so you immediately started with the three Hun. Yes, so
Yeah.
And so the three hun are tools that we have available to rediscover or to find that love inside of ourselves, which then will open up hope.
The 300, the pole is also possible, but that's a different kind of hope.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is also needed. Yeah, of course, it's needed when we are in a situation that really is threatening our being or not only physicality, but everything. I can't even think about it. When you are in a country now, like there are all these wars, we need also the hope of hope that we would otherwise we are probably not able to live our life in such situations. So
the
that
hope of hope, meaning that something will change on the physical level, on the outside,
on the
on the
outside and something will change so we can survive. But
right.
we always also have the opportunity inside ourselves
Mm,
to see what is the reason that I react this way. And when you stop that, then the internal process is activated, you could say, in which you can see that these things come from inside suffering, like inside insecurity or loneliness or fear or things like that. And when you can face that, embrace that, and being with it, that is the real true being of ourselves. Let me put it different. For ages, we have done the poor hope and
mm,
blamed other people, and we want to have a better situation. And we still have wars, and we have still have lots of oppositions and discussions which threaten people. That we already did for ages and ages, and it never solved anything. We, as human beings, and that's also something which is related to the Hun, we live on the shoulders of our ancestors through the Jinn, but also through the consciousness of all the people left the earth already for ages. But our whole system is evolved in who we are, and we as beings created this world, all of them. Me, you, we all did that. I'm in my world, you're in your world, but we created that world as it is now. We are responsible for that, but we don't want to look at that because we don't want to look at this dark side of ourselves. That inside suffering of loneliness and maybe aggression, maybe fear, maybe all these things are also inside ourselves. And the only way to, I think the only way, maybe there's another way, but I think that's the only way, is to look inside and face that we are part of that. We created this kind of difficult work where there's a lot of suffering, and we can't solve it through the hope from Poe, but we can only change something inside ourselves by which we change something in this big community which we call the humanity,
mhm.
which we all created ourselves.
Um, so you mentioned the three hun, and you focused a lot on the middle dantian hun, or um, and but from what you said, yeah, both all three hun have to do with communication. You said, um, and it seemed like that you talked about kinetic communication in the first hun, yeah, and that immediately has this feeling of it's a movement out, yeah. But in my from what you said about the other hun, yeah, that all the hun have their basis in also not only a communication from me to outside, but also a communication from myself to myself.
That's
So
also
to
the
be
first one because you have the pleasure and you want more.
right,
And there's
yeah,
there's also a communication of inside outsides. And when
yeah,
you let how it goes usually, the something happens here on the side, yeah, and I see that my will says I want to look at that, so my shen looks at that, and the hun follows. And the first thing the hun does Is it dangerous? Is it nice? Can I have pleasure from that? First, lower down Tian Hun. Oh, that's a nice person. Maybe I should communicate, or maybe not a nice person. Let go of it. And when the third Hun is inside, it just watches. Yeah. But all three are happening at the same time.
Mhm.
But it is always the interaction.
Can you so what's the difference? Also, then I want to go into kind of aspects how we can treat these things. So, but what's the difference between the great movement wood, the emanation yuan, and the three hun?
Emanation Yuan is a cosmological principle,
Mm,
yeah, which guides everything what relates to the creative and guiding aspect of Yuan. But it is a cosmological principle mentioned in the I Ching. It's not mentioned in the Suen or Ling Shu or Nanjing. The Great Movement Wood is it describes, the Chinese described the great movements because they saw during the seasons there were differences, and they described the great movement wood as something which is not tangible, but described all things that relate to wood perspective. So it could be like gallbladder liver, but also rising qi, yeah, or guiding. That's also part of Yuan great movement. So guiding principle could be Yuan Qi. Yuan Qi is related to the kidneys. It's stored near the kidneys, but the principle of Yuan Qi is also the source Qi, and that guides the rest of the Qi. That's part of also great movement wood.
mm.
Um, so there are many, like springtime is great movement wood. Everything that has to do with an aspect of wood is guided by the great movement wood, is expressed by the great movement wood. It's not guided, it's expressed.
Mhm. And
Um,
what's the role of the Hun?
the Hun is one of the expressions of the great movement wood. It's like a vehicle. Yeah. It's like I think you described it once that, or maybe I did, that it's a boat on the river who crosses the river. Yeah, that it's a way to express the great movement wood as well. Yeah, so the Hun is individual, the great movement wood is general, it's universal. But the
So they
Hun,
help, they give guidance on an individual level to
yes,
express the great
yes,
movement wood.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and but then great movement wood is based on love. Is it?
yes, you could say so. Yeah. It's like when you see the sequence, if you see the sequence of um, the great movement and the stems, um, maybe I have a picture of that. 1 second. Um, Let me check. Oh, 1 second. Thought I had a picture of that. No, it's not
You know,
that.
maybe before you go into this picture, what is your, because we might all have different understandings of what love is.
Oh, that's a good one.
So, w what is when we say our wood is based on love, or it's an expression of love, and we find love again, and
Yeah,
that
I
gives
don't
us
I don't
hope.
need a picture for that. That's a good one. It's better
So,
not to
but
look
what
at the
is
picture.
what do you mean with love? Because yeah,
Yeah, love has so many meanings. So when we love a person, that is also love. When we love our children, that's also love. Even if we have unconditional love for your wife or husband or children or your father and mother or whatever, that's all love. The love which that's not related to great movement wood. That's not the love I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Love which I'm talking about has no opposition. It is something like wisdom also has no opposition. Love has no opposition. Love is life-giving. And there's no example you can give. You can't put it in words because the moment you put it in words, it already has an opposition. When it's not, then it's not love. Love is something which is like Tao. You can't name Tao actually. You can't describe Tao um, because when you give it words, then immediately it has something which is not. And that's not what I meant with love. Love, the best way I can express it is a life-giving thing. It doesn't have to be lovely. It doesn't have to be nice or wonderful, or it can be even sometimes um, cruel for us. Yeah, that we are put in the situations where we start to understand something of ourselves, which is also love. Yeah, so it is never an excuse, but love is it helping us to live and helping us further in our way to evolve as human beings, but also in person, individual evolution of yourself. That's all guided by love, which is
So is that like an acceptance of how things are? Is that because
no, it's
then
the other way around. It's the other way
sorry.
around. It is the other way around. When we accept, are we able, are we able to look at things as they
Mm,
are? That's the question. Are we able without an image? So when I talk about a flower, everybody sees an image of a flower at this moment. When I talk about a house, everybody has the image of a house because we have that. So what we're actually talking to is the image of the flower or the image of the house.
mm,
Are we able to look at the flower as we see it the first time, the very first time? Never seen a flower before, never seen a house before. Are we able to see that? And then you see, if you really see the facts, really be in the here and now, that you look at something, you see it for the very first time, every single time.
that
When
is
you,
love.
that's love. When you see a patient, the patient
Mm,
comes in with a history, and you
yeah.
know that history. And when you go to the pulse, the best advice I can give you, take that pulse as you see it for the first time,
Hmm.
not with the whole history. Then there is love.
So then how can we treat that? How can we work with that when there's almost it's beyond principle. It's beyond um or what's the treatment idea behind it? Not in terms of points or anything, but what
No.
would be if you wanted to treat the great movement wood, or if you wanted to give love give somebody the ability to reconnect with love.
The
What's the
first, the first
treatment?
thing, the first thing is never judge. That's the first thing as a practitioner. Never ever judge when you treat somebody. Even if it comes up, try to keep it in. Because judgment, no, not to keep it in, come in terms with that because it's your judgment and it's your pain that you judge it. So don't judge. That's the first thing. And then um, hope is something also we hope to cure people. That's also a hope. We hope that they will be better soon, or hope they will be better in a week or 2 weeks or whatever. Um, Let go of that. It's a process of a person, him or herself. The
Hmm.
best we can do is offer our skills uh, that they that the chi starts to flow as natural in them as possible, natural for them. That helps them to become healthy and whole again. So the thing we do is we make a distinction. Where is this energy imbalanced? So if there's a lot of pleasure and a lot of wanting and a lot of having more and more, we know that has to do with the lower jiao. We know that the energy starts in the lower jiao, like as we described in the liver axis from liver 3 to CV2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
That area is blocked. Then you can't say when unblocked they are more healthy, but that is needed. First thing is needed that that is unblocked so that the deep Sanjiao function can work, which is an aspect of rising qi and spreading qi, which is great movement wood as well. So that action needs to be there, and if it's blocked, it's not there. And then it allows them to attune more to their natural energy instead of that you cure their pain or that comes along. Yeah, when they're back to their natural energy, they will be more healthy and they will get rid of their pain. But if you only focus on the pain or only focus on the syndrome, then you don't look at that natural energy of a person. And in constitutional acupuncture, that's what we do without judging, seeing where the natural energy is not flowing and try to bring it back to them.
So you talked about free flow, and of course, yeah, we all know that free flow we relate it to the liver, so we would treat the liver. But according to these concepts that we talked about, then free flow um, is always to do with the lack of love, the lack of acceptance of how things are on a particular level. So there might be too much desire, there might be too much, but there's always obviously a stagnation. A stagnation means, yeah, that there's yeah, there's no kind of allowing things to be as they are.
Yes, but that already is a kind of judgment. If we talk about there's too much love or the lack of love or there's um, I
Because
think
we where I want to go to is that we have, so you mentioned is the deep Sanjiao. Yes,
yeah,
so we have there this concept of Yuan Qi, we have that concept of the Sanjiao, yeah, and the Sanjiao just allows things to flow, yeah, because there's no opposition in the Sanjiao.
yes, yeah,
Yeah. So that is that concept that you talked about is love.
that is aspect of love. True. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So the same principle we also have like in the Yon source points. No, it's at least on the yin, their earth points. Yeah, and earth also is supposed to it's
Whole
the
yin and yang. Yeah,
old yin and yang without opposition.
yeah.
Yes, so they're all similar concepts. So where does Yuan Qi come into this? Because all these points have to do with Yuan Qi. They obviously have to do with something to do with wood, with a free flow. Um, so we have that wood earth
Mhm.
and no opposition principle in all
Yeah,
these
yeah,
aspects.
yeah.
How do we bring that together?
How we bring that together so it becomes practical. Yeah.
Yeah.
The, I think the first thing is what you said about that when you see people, we like to understand people, and then we can say there's a lack of energy or there's a lack of movement or there's a lack of love or something that I want to go one step before is
Hmm.
that you see a person and when you see a stagnation is not immediately ask yourself, why is there stagnation there? Because you have no idea. It could be with lack of love or lack of movement, but maybe there was something else. You can only see there is a stagnation as it is, and that
Hmm.
only stay with that. There's a stagnation. Now, um, let's start with Yuan Chi. Yuan Chi, and I have to be a little bit theoretical in this part because the way Yuan Chi is described changed during the years. When you read the Suwen is mainly a cosmology scripture. It's a scripture about cosmology
Hmm.
and about like the great movement, like the stems, etc., and the branch. It has to do with cosmology, a lot of it. It doesn't even mention Yuan Shi often, I think, as far as I know. The Ling Shu, Yuan Shi also is mentioned, especially in chapter 1, where it describes the 12 yuan source points. And the first time I read that, I thought maybe the 12 channels, but it's not. It's only the the yuan source points of the yin channels, the yin organs, the zhang, and
Yeah.
CV6 and CV15. Yeah. Uh, it's on both sides. Yeah. So it treats the five zhang. It says when you treat the yuan qi, when you treat the yuan qi point, yuan source point, you treat the five zhang. But it
Hmm.
is very much related to the channels, to the meridians. So the whole Ling Shu is not about cosmology, but it is about how cosmology works out in the channels.
Hmm.
And then later, the Nanjing was written. And the Nanjing brings that all together and makes it how is the physiology of Yuan Qi in the body. And then it starts to talk about the deep Sanjiao function. So it depends on when we talk about Yuan Qi from a concept of cosmology, we say this is the source Qi of everything. It's the universal beginning. It has a little bit to do with the emanation of Yuan, you could say, it has the same character. So
Yeah.
it is the origin of everything. Even you could say it's an expression of Tao, close to Tao. And when you talk about the channels, like in the Ling Shu, it has
Yeah.
even a different character. It's called a source point. And the source is, and then when you see the character, it has to do with a well and a cliff where the well, the water starts to flow. And so it means that there is an origin within the meridian where it
Hmm.
starts to move. But if that source is empty, then there is no chi anymore. Then
Hmm.
there, so there needs to be a guidance of the source towards the whole channel. Yeah. So that's where this guiding principle comes from. And in the Nanjing, as far as I remember, it says the starting point of the channel is the Yuan source point. But we
Hmm.
know that it's the Jing well point, which is a
Yeah.
wood point, often a wood quality, you could say.
Yeah.
And the Yuan source point and the Jing well point are very close connected. And it's often that we need to treat them together. But they see the Yuan source point as the starting point of that channel. And why? Because the Sanjiao is present there. Because the Sanjiao is present, it is a starting point of the channel. And so where does the Sanjiao come from? That in the Nanjing, chapter 66, is described that it has the moving qi between the kidney, which is a yang expression, a moving quality of the yuan qi.
Hmm.
That the yin part is different, but the yang part, the expression of yuan qi is that moving qi is picked up by the sanjiao and it is spread all over the body through all the cells, all the tissues, all the organs, everything. It is imbued by that moving qi or yuan qi through the sanjiao, and it makes connection to the back shu points. It makes connection to the yuan source points. I
So
don't
does
even
that?
think that it is through channels, but it is
Hmm.
much more through resonance. But that's my own belief.
Hmm. But if we want to kind of get some common point between cosmology, the physiology, the channels, no, then all of that has to do with that there's something where there's no opposition, out of which something else is being started.
That's the core of it, but we individualize it. We individualize it. Like
Yeah, yeah. So it's
when
on
it
a
comes
more
into the
individual
channel,
level.
when it comes into the channel system,
Yeah.
even the moving chi maybe is already individualized, which means that it is not there anymore. There is still yin and yang cooperating and creating things. But like in Sanjiao, there is really a merging of yin and yang. The yuan qi, there's even no yin and yang. It's just as
It-
love. You can actually not describe it.
yeah.
But the moment it starts to flow, it is put into time.
Yeah.
Then there's immediately already an opposition of it.
But so this relation to Earth, that we say, yeah, it's so the great the wood point is the Jingwell point, yeah, but the third point is the Earth point, and so it gives us also a little bit of coming back to the concept of Hun, where we said, yeah, it gives us guidance for our individuality, how to live,
Yes.
how to move out into the world, how to communicate, how to so there is this sense of self already involved, and that's for me always to do with the earth here. And the guidance there is that we have to be able to even be ourselves, but not be ourselves, to have these two opposing principles at the same time for Yuan
Yeah.
Qi to be able to happen.
No, you and she will always happen. It's not that you can't choose for that.
Yeah.
Um, in how to say that? Ideally, you could say that the Earth has this yin and yang together and it's in balance, but it creates a space. Yin and yang creates a space in which things happen. I've described it also in my book with the small intestine, for instance. There's a space that you connect to the past, the future, and so on.
Hmm.
So yin and yang create a space, but when you look at people and you want to treat them, and especially when it has to do with the great movement wood, we have to think about something more important. First of all, there let me put it different, and then after I will have a short break after this, and
Yeah,
then
after that, I would like 10 minutes
yeah,
break. Yeah.
and then we will discuss this even more. But it has to do with the great movement wood is not on its own. The great movement wood exists from the interaction between of water and fire, which
Yeah, that I would like to
immediately
talk
create
later
wood.
about. Yeah.
Yeah? And
Uh-huh.
that's something I would like to talk about it and how we treat the great movement wood then.
Okay.
So let's have five to
So
10 minutes.
maybe have 10 minutes break and then
Yeah,
we'll go into that.
yeah, that's okay.
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 Brilliant. Do I leave the recording running, man? I don't
No,
remember.
the pause.
Good. Let's start again. Before we go into this practical aspects, just to clarify again, so Yuan Qi is a guiding principle. Um,
It is one of the things. Yeah, it's a guiding principle. But why is it a guiding principle?
that's the question I wanted to ask. And where's it? So it must be strongly related to wood, yeah, because we said wood is a also as an emanation yuan, yeah, it's the guiding principle.
Mm.
Whereas yuan qi different to the Hun and the Great Movement would, or is it the same? And where does it guide us to? So guiding also always means to guide us towards something. So what does it guide us towards?
First of all, what is Yuan Shi?
Right.
What do you understand from Yuan Shi?
Yeah, as we said, yeah, it's for me the understanding of Yuan Qi, it's the source Qi. Yeah, so it has to do with if we look back at the creation, yeah, that something so even well, I mean, it's even going back to the universal spark, when we say yes, so out of this vastness of undifferentiated energy, yeah, there's some concentration of energy, yeah, which then is the universal spark, which is the start of then it separates into yin and yang. Where does yuan qi come into that process? No,
Yeah.
because I mean, yeah, the question why does energy concentrate is maybe not a good question to ask. Yeah, it just is. Yeah, but
Mm.
what's the role of yuan qi in that process of this concentration of energy out of the vastness of undifferentiated energy? And what
Mm.
is the yeah, what is the role of yuan qi in that? Well, because it must be involved in that process, but it's not
Yes,
the same.
it is. The Yuan Qi, when you read the Ling Shu and also the Nanjing, it says Yuan Qi, you need to treat the Yuan Qi when the organs or the Zhang and Fu are impaired. And then you
Mm,
treat the Yuan Qi or the Yuan source point. And in the Yuan source point, there's Yuan Qi because the Sanjiao is there and Sanjiao
mm,
connects
yeah.
the Yuan Qi
But
to
what does
the
it mean to treat the yuan qi? That's
exactly,
my question.
exactly.
So for that,
Yuan Qi as a principle of origin of everything
mm,
means that, as far as I'm concerned and how I was taught
yeah.
what Yuan Qi is, the Yuan Qi connects our Yuan Qi as we have it inside us, connects us to what was before. Everything that was before is connected to us through the Yuan Qi, which means that what I said, we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors and we create this world, every one of us personally.
But then yuan qi can't be connected in time, so
No,
it almost takes us out of the time,
it is
which
out of time. It is
then
out
gives
of
us
time.
the ability to it gives
But
us the
that's
ability
the
to tap in.
difference. The difference is that Yuan Qi described in the origin, like in the Suwen, is
Mm,
that or that energy was without time. It is our brains have evolved because we all our ancestors went through certain experiences given to us through the jinn.
mm-hmm.
But it also happened through something which is how do you call that? It's not in time. It is we get something from our ancestors from which we evolve further.
But to be
The-
able to integrate it, we need to step out of time.
no, Yuan Qi, which is out of time,
Yeah.
guides that, not through time, but all the processes inside us, all the transformations happening, also evolutionary, is guided by Yuan Qi. But when it is in our body and it is a moving Qi between the kidneys, then it is already individualized. Then it is within time and we use it in time. And especially when it's a Yuan source point, Ling Shu, or when it is Yuan Qi, which is picked up by the deep Sanjiao function and spread all over, it's postnatal, it's individualized. So
Hmm.
there you can use it for you as a person, as an individual. So when you eat an apple, it takes the energy which is good for you, and for another person, it's different. That's how the Yuan Qi guides that transformation. But originally, the Yuan Qi is a source Qi which is beyond time because it connects it to what was before.
So, but if it's individualized, can transformation ever happen in time? It has to be out of time. No, it always happens now.
It happens now, but um,
So this is a question
but
is yuan qi.
no, the now is already a process in time. Actually, to be honest, time is actually a how do you call it? String or whatever you can call it of nows.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the time
Yeah.
is eternal within now. You could say
Yeah.
now is an aspect of time, as the future, as the past. Space is different. In space, everything can happen. Space is something which contains all possibilities. But
Yeah.
now is time. The transformation in our body is time. And that is happening also under the guidance of Yuan Qi. So when there is a impairment of anything which has to do with transformation, it could be from food into Qi or Qi into food, or moving itself is also transformation, that we go from here to there. Everything what has to do with change or transformation is guided by Yuan Qi. From our ancestors till where we are now,
And
based on that.
so how would you address yuan qi then? If you said, okay, we need to treat yuan qi, what's the mechanism behind it?
The mechanism behind it is, first of all, the deep Shanjiao function. that you can that deep Sanjiao function, if that doesn't work well, then that aspect of helping everything that transforms is not um, how do you call it? It doesn't work 100%. If the deep Sanjiao function stops working, then the yuan qi is not spread all over the body. One thing you can, what I do usually in clinic, what I look at is not even the lower jiao in the beginning, but the movement of the ankle, yeah,
Hmm.
of the foot and the leg. If the movement of the ankle is stiff or is impaired, is not balanced, um, that immediately says something about the movement of the lower jiao, because the movement of the ankle and the movement within the lower jiao are very closely connected to each other. Even so that if you start moving just the ankle, as people who do body work, for instance, and they check the movement of the ankle and the looseness or the stiffness of the ankle, immediately says something about the function of the lower jaw. Yeah. And of course, you can check the lower jaw function in the movement of the back and the abdomen, etc. But the ankle is my diagnostic tool to look at that and see how is that movement. Is it stiff? Is it loose? Or how does it function in the body? And that tells you already something about the function of the deep Sanjiao function.
Right. So the deep Sanjiao function um, has to do with right spraying yuan qi into the meridian system or throughout the body. Yeah, but the yuan qi in as that, but it also has to do with spreading the or making the jing available to the body, the deep Sanjiao function.
The Jing, but also the Yuan Qi, both, but mainly also Yuan Qi. It picks up the moving Qi and the root, as we call it, sometimes is Jing, sometimes Yuan Qi, sometimes together, but the root itself is a combination of Yuan Qi and Jing Qi. Yeah.
So then you talk about the deep Sanjiao function. And so what is so special about the deep Sanjiao function that it can allow that? And what's that connection to the ankles then? So you talk about the movement of the ankles, but some have
Yeah.
stiff ankles. Some might have injuries in the ankles. So does
Yeah.
that mean that they don't have access so well to
True.
the young?
Yeah. If there's an injury in the ankle and there's stiffness in the ankle, it usually goes together with a certain kind of stiffness in the lower jaw function. And you can compensate that and you can try to compensate that, but there's a close relationship to it. And if there's a really stiff ankle, people will walk differently as well. So the whole mechanism is also different, but also energetically it will be different. I don't say it's wrong or right, but it's an observation.
But
Like
what is the free
the
flow of
doctor
the ankle to
Dr.
do
Van
with?
Buren said that the movement of the ankle is
Mm,
governed by Sanjiao.
hmm.
The outside, of course, is more related to gallbladder. The inside maybe more to liver, and you could say that the yin chao ma and yang chao ma have to do with the ankle, and it's all true. But the movement of the ankle as such is governed by Sanjiao. So when that movement in general is impaired, that means that something is happening within the Sanjiao function. And points you see also when you look at points like liver 4 or gallbladder 40 or even kidney 6 and bladder 62, they do something with the lower jaw as well. Yeah.
Hmm.
And the
But when
lower
we
jaw.
say it's related to the Sanjiao, you talk about the Sanjiao meridian.
No, the function, whole
The
function,
function.
everything of Sanjiao. There's not
And
only, when you talk about Sanjiao, you talk about the Sanjiao channel, you talk
yeah.
about the deep function of Sanjiao, you talk about the internal duct of Sanjiao, everything
Mhm.
what has to do with Sanjiao. And
But
Sanjiao is
let's look at then the Sanjiao meridian, yeah, with its six yin lines, yeah, which means yeah, it's it's yin, yeah, it's just there,
in
um,
the branches, you mean?
in the
The
branches.
hexagon
Yeah.
related to Sanjiao. Yeah.
Yeah. So where I want to get to is what is it, the deep Sanjiao, the internal duct of the Sanjiao meridian. So what is it? What's the quality in those concepts that allows that free flow of yuan qi.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the maybe you remember we once talked about that Dr. Van Buren said that the heavenly chi enters on the left side of your hand, the ring finger, and then it enters the Sanjiao channel.
yeah.
The Sanjiao channel is related to the hexagram kun because it is receiving and responding. It
Hmm.
receives the energy from heaven and responds by helping it to be transformed for the body to be the body, you could say. Yeah, so
Hmm.
it is the energy, it is the it's not the emperor, but the minister fire. So the minister fire is postnatal. It received the energy of heaven, so that energy can be used, or I don't have a good name for it at this moment, but that it is the energy is provided, chi is provided for the body, so it can function in its form, it can function with its life, it can function in movement, it can function in nourishment. It's, all these things is through the Sanjiao function. So the
Hmm.
Sanjiao function is really supporting us to be as we are. Yeah, if the Sanjiao wouldn't work, we couldn't function, we couldn't live. Yeah. So the receiving of heavenly chi, that's also great movements. Yeah,
Yeah.
is due to the function of Sanjiao. If Sanjiao doesn't work anymore, we don't receive heavenly functions anymore. So in that sense, it responds by giving it to provide it to us as beings so we can respond back to heaven. So it is an
Mhm.
intermediate between what we said. Sanjiao is always intermediate between inside, outside, between yang and yin. And so Sanjiao here is the intermediate between heavenly chi, earthly chi. And so we as human beings are able to function and answer back to heaven. Yeah. So without Sanjiao, that wouldn't be possible. Yeah.
Okay. So then you check the ankles. You said that's the first thing you do before even going to the lower jiao or lower dantian.
I check, sometimes I check it, but one thing I always observe how people walk
Mm.
and how they enter the room and how is the movement of the ankle, because that says a lot about the energy of the lower jaw.
And then you would focus on points around or you try to integrate points around the ankles to treat that with acupuncture or
That depends. You can't say that. It's not a
Mm.
formula like that, but it is
Mm.
it's more the observation that you see how something is going there in the ankle, but something you check also in pulse diagnosis if it's correct that you say, well, that also has to do with the uh, lower jaw of the body. Uh,
Mhm.
but then you start diagnose. So what's going on there? And there's no one way in. You can't say that this is the
Okay.
trick, but it's
Okay.
part of your diagnosis that there's something in the lower jaw. Then you of course you look at the functions of the kidney, of the bladder, of the root in pulse diagnosis, but also of the sanjiao, deep sanjiao, but also of the how do you call it? How do people do they have a lot of pleasures? Do they need a lot of pleasures, like the lower dantian hun? Yeah, so
Mhm.
all these things come together to observe what is going on there, and does it belong to them? How is their lower jaw presented in their birth chart, etc., etc., etc. So
Mhm.
you can't say there's one way to treat that, but
Mhm.
one way to observe the function of the lower dantian is, among other things, the movement of the ankle.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and
So
sometimes you use points there.
if we want to treat, let's go back to the great movement wood, yeah, or the Hun, and we go by that principle of also the wood comes out of the water. Yeah, so we have that relation of kidney and liver here. But we also have that relationship of from the Ho2 here that we have one is water, two is fire, three is wood. Yes,
Yeah,
so
I'll show you that
immediately
picture. Yeah,
we go to the vertical axis that we should check first.
yeah, this one you meant. Yeah,
Yeah.
here you see the the how-to diagram, and we don't go into all the little details, but hang on, I can't see it myself at the moment. Okay, I'll try to see it. Here you see the number 1, here's number 2, and this is water together with 6, and fire is 7. And here you see number 3, and number 3 is the number of wood together with the number 8. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And originally, and you can read that, there was, in the beginning, there was yin and yang interact, so water, moisture runs downwards, and then from the moisture there was heat rises, and that together create warmth. And warmth create growth, and that is the number 3. That's the wood aspect. I'm not talking about metal now at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
but looking at it, it's important to understand that this trinity of fire, water, and wood is within this circle. There is a center, there's a field, and there's a circumference. That's also a trinity which is important to understand, that the trinity is always this center, this field, and this limitation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that leads to growth. This possibility of 3 forces, and you see that in all kind of religions like Atma, Buddhi, Manas, and the God and the Son and the Holy Ghost, and so there are many more trinities. Like in Chinese, we say we have the sun, the moon, and the stars. Yeah, and on Earth, it's water, fire, wind, and in our body, it is Shen, Qi, Jing. Yeah, Jing is more the water aspect, Shen is the fire aspect, and Qi is the field in which we live, where Qi can move. So the wood aspect has to do with the movement of Qi in any way. Any movement of Qi is related to the great movement wood. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But when that is unbalanced, when the energy movement is unbalanced, and Hun also has to do with movement. Hun has a lot to do with movement, the 3 Hun. When that is out of balance, you can look to the kidneys to treat the wood, but most of all, you should look at the relationship between the kidney and the fire first, because this movement of water and fire, let's say moisture, water runs downwards, and then you get heat, and from that you get warmth, and there is wood. That happens actually all together in one go. It's not something which happens in time, you could say. So there's always, when there's wood, when there's wind, there must be water and fire. So when wood, there's something wrong with wood, you should first look at what is the relationship of water, fire. From there, wood engages. So when water, fire is not functioning well, then the wood aspect is not functioning well. So you should always look at water, indeed, not as feeling the wood, but more what is the relationship to fire and how do they communicate with each other. So the vertical axis in the body is mostly important when you want to treat the great movement wood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I know you didn't want to go into, or in this case, you didn't want to go into the metal, no, but these. So we have the vertical axis, we have water and fire, yeah, and it's almost like wood is an expression of that kind of vertical axis, yeah, into life, yeah, with movement. Um,
Yes, but we forget one thing on
mhm,
is the deep Sanjiao function
mhm,
is a function which brings the kidney fire. No, let's start before. When we are born, the fire of the heart is brought to the kidneys
mhm,
to keep the heart as empty as possible, so it's open to the world. And you
mhm.
see it when children are born, they're how do you call it? The way they look into the world
Yeah.
is full of openness, usually. If it's not, it says something. But
Mhm,
what it does, the Sanjiao brings it to the kidney area, and during life, it brings it up to the heart when it's needed. That's part of the kidney heart relationship. So when people are overwhelmed by emotions or
Mm,
exhausted from exercises or work or diseases or anything like that, and they feel overwhelmed because of the pain they have or all these things, then you know that the vertical axis, the function of the vertical axis, among that there is a deep Sanjiao function
hmm
that has an influence on the function of the great movement wood and the wood in general. Because water fire is needed to create wind, to create wood.
hmm hmm
So therefore you can't treat the wood on its own. And what do we see? What stems are within wood? Heart and bladder,
hmm
fire and water. Yeah.
Okay.
So often you treat that relationship, but don't forget there is also kidney as part of it and heart.
Hard. Okay. And you said that the kidney gives the fire back to the heart when needed. When is it needed?
The it, it works two ways. That when the heart is overwhelmed,
Yeah.
then it wants to be the heart. Ideally, the heart is not overwhelmed. The heart is empty in a way, so it
Mm.
can observe the world as it is. And when
Yeah.
the heart is overwhelmed with emotions, then it doesn't observe the world anymore as it is. And we all have that. We all look at the world with our own perspective. But there are situations. I remember.
So
Uh,
how would you treat that then? So if the heart is overwhelmed and you want to draw that energy down again, or you want to give fire to the heart, or
no, no, no. The um, when the heart is overwhelmed, you want to calm it down. First of
Mm,
all, the heart is, but that's not always to do with great movement wood. But the heart works like if the heart has too much fire, it transfers it to the pericard, it transfers it to the lungs, it can even transfer it to the lungs. So it brings the the fire back to not back, it brings it to another area. So you see pneumonia, or you see pericarditis, or you see kidney failures, or you see spleen failures from heat. Yeah,
mm,
that overwhelming the heart keeps that empty. When the heart is really insufficient, then the deep Sanjiao brings some of that fire back to the heart. So what you should observe is what's happening in the heart. Is it where does it go to? Where is the other fire? So you understand that the heart is overwhelmed and it's
mm,
brought to the
mm,
lungs, for instance, and you see people with bronchitis or you see people with pneumonia.
mm.
And
Maybe we can. There was a question about I might fit in well about hopelessness, depression. Yeah, so depression is when the heart almost kind of shuts down and doesn't want to perceive the world, doesn't want to be open to the world. And so there's hopelessness, there's a lack of optimism, and how do we create that access to love again? Yeah, and how in that case, what's the relationship between the Hun and the Po and the Shen in
I
that
think
case?
I think there is no straightforward answer, but I give some clues there.
Mm,
Um, and I don't say you can easily treat that. It's like a trick. You do this point, and then people are. But you should look at what actually is happening. Is it because people are in despair and they don't want to live anymore, for instance?
mm,
That is a Po issue. Hun issue. People just have no initiative anymore. It doesn't matter. They don't do anything. They are depressed and see what's happening, but they are not. They don't want to commit suicide at all. But they just out of energy. They don't want to. That's a Hun. That's a Hun issue.
mhm,
But first of all, you should discriminate or make the distinction. That's better to between is it a Po depression or is it a Hun depression? Both have to do with Shen, but that's maybe for a later moment. So first of all, you should make a distinction between Hun and Po. If it's related to the Hun, um, you should look at what aspect of the Hun is impaired. Is it more the lower jiao? Are people exhausting themselves because of their wishes and the desires, etc.? Or the middle jiao is that they're constantly interacting with social media or with people, or is that interaction disturbed? Um, or are they just retreated? They don't dare to go into communication, and usually it's not the upper part. Um, and then you should look to treat that area, and that's most important to see what area actually is it going. Is it in the middle jiao? Then that's the area of liver, of spleen, of stomach, diaphragm, that area. And when it's upper jiao, usually it's much higher, and lower jiao is much more the intestines and the bladder and the kidney, and in that area you can
Hmm.
treat.
Hmm.
But one distinction you should make is that are people able to look at themselves? Are people able to look at themselves? If it's a Hun issue, and I don't say it as a trick, and it doesn't always work. You have to be very precise in your post diagnosis. You can't use it just because I said so. But if your post diagnosis is right and the observation is right that people can't face themselves, can't face inside, then, for instance, kidney 21 is a very good point, helping to face inside. And that's needed for any cure in these kind of depressions. So if they don't do it, they only look outside, and you feel that kidney 21 is uh, needed within the pulse,
Hmm.
then you can do kidney 21, but not just as a trick. Or they can't face themselves. I do kidney 21. That isn't.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
another
in,
thing is one more thing
yeah.
is that, for instance, if there's a complete imbalance between Po and Hun, and sometimes you see that people are very aggressive and very defensive, and still they feel very depressed, yeah, but they feel like they blame the world. That's a real imbalance between Hun and Po. Then you should check the movement of the ankle, and just treat that movement of the ankle. And you can do that with kidney 6 or bladder 62 or liver 4 or gallbladder 40, or even points like bladder 65. Depends on the pulse, depends on the person, but treat the movement of the ankle so that the lower jaw function um, is improved.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, so you talked about this coming back, yeah. So we have the fire water balance, we have the heart and the kidney balance, yeah, which kind of um connects us to our willpower, connects us to the almost the purpose of our life. Yeah, that we see a purpose in our life. Yeah, and then the wood is almost then the expression of that purpose into the world. The hun, yeah,
So
is
Hun guides that process.
or
Hun
guides
guides
that
the evolution.
process
Yeah,
into the world.
yeah,
Yeah. And so you talked about this Hunpo. So this is the relationship, maybe we can say, between Shen and Tzu, yeah, and the Hun. Um, but what is the relationship? And you talked about this imbalance between the Hun and the Po then, because immediately, so we have Shen and Tzu, and immediately we have Hun. Um, and but then immediately when we have Hun, we have also the Po.
yeah. Not immediately. The Po is needed for the Hun.
The Po is
The
needed for the Hun, yes. So, but when you talked about this imbalance and you talked about look at the ankles, what's the relationship? Because the Hun you said is not we it's intangible. No, we so it's almost to really manifest it on a physical level, we need the Po.
um, you need the structure. Yeah, Po first of all is needed for our structure. The the Po starts from just after conception. Actually, there is already a Po. because any construct, any structure is governed by Po in the body. So Po gives a structure, but it's also your survival mechanism. It's also your defense mechanism, your reactive mechanism. The things I said in the beginning about hope,
Yeah.
I was talking about that what we could do is to calm down our reactions. That has to do with the instinctive reactions we all create through our lives. We have instinctive reactions from our neurological system, but there are
Mm.
also instinctive reactions based on survival mechanisms or experiences. When somebody talks about this, I do this automatically. Yeah. So it's not that you can say that the Hoon doesn't have that, but the Po especially has that instinctive reaction.
Mhm.
And so when you see people acting with a always reactive, you could say, very reactive, that's a Po thing. And the more people allow things to be part of them, to listen to things and to see what it does inside, that's more Hoon related. Yeah. So for instance, um, if I say something about stiff ankle, yeah,
Mhm.
you say something to me like, what happens when there's a stiff ankle due to an accident? That's
Mhm.
Po related.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's nothing right or wrong there, but that's Po related because it helps you when you ask that, you had a patient with that and you think about it, how can I do with it? That's reaction. Or when
Mhm.
people have a stiff ankle, they will immediately, yeah, but that was because of an accident. And they
Mhm.
react immediately. What can you do with a stiff ankle?
Yeah.
Does it harm this deep sound? Yeah. This is a reaction.
Mhm.
Instead of the Hun reaction would be like, okay, I'm afraid that I have something which maybe impairs my deep Sanjiao function. Why? What is the reason I'm afraid? Or I have this patient, I can't cure him. What is there in me that I want to cure him? Where does
Mhm.
that come from? That's Hun related. Yeah. And so through a conversation, you can find, is this person at this moment more related to a Po reaction, instinctive action, reactive, or more silence and action from something which evolved inside?
So the when we go into treatment of or when we want to change things inside of ourselves, yeah, including uh, trauma, that's a Hunpo balance that we need to
It's
work on.
always a Wun Po balance. And we discussed Po before with the
Mm.
seven Po and
Yeah.
how the virtues of the three Hun actually balance that. But from the Hun perspective, I think it's important that in my observation, it always starts with the lower jiao. Because when the lower jiao is often impaired because of we have so many desires as human beings
Mm.
and we want to be in contact with people, not only just having contact, we want to have physical contact, we want to feel people. And the drives from the lower jiao of the Zi and so is so strong. And
Mm.
the way we eat, the way we drink, we consume, all these things is related to the lower jiao. So it's
Mhm.
very important to see if we can balance that lower jiao function not only through liver 4 or something like that, because it
Mm.
works on the lower jiao, but all the things you have learned to balance and harmonize the energy in the lower jiao. And that has to do with the liver chi axis, CV2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Has to do with the back shu points there, has to do with the dumai. Daimai is most important. I've used many times, I've points like liver 13 or gallbladder 27 to loosen up the lower jiao. And
Mhm.
so it's very important to put your focus on the lower jiao and see if people are able, not through you talking, but that you see that the how do you call it, reactive and and consumative, or how do you call that? The quest for pleasure uh,
Hmm.
calms down a bit. And if that calms down a bit, then there's a possibility to go further. But I think when you start treating the Hun in patients, 80% of them start with the lower jaw.
So in a way, the Po almost give us ideally the security to be able for the Hun to go inside and
Exactly.
investigate. And sometimes the Po are just overreactive
Yeah.
because of past experiences, because of imbalances in the lower jaw, because and to calm that down first while the patients or while we even still feel safe, that we know we're safe, that enables the Hund to be able to go inside and find that stillness, find the love, find the hope inside.
Well, it is inside the Hun, but if
Yeah.
there's no safety, if your clinic room doesn't radiate safety,
Mm-hmm.
then the Hun doesn't do anything. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Maybe the lower Dantian Hun. So
Okay.
it is important to have a safe environment so that there is a free flow of Qi, a free flow of Hun, but also a free flow of Po. That when people feel defensive, that they can share that with you. That I feel
Yeah.
defensive, I feel angry, or
Okay.
yeah, that's important.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe maybe we'll just uh open up for questions if people still have questions that they want to ask directly now.
Yeah, that's
Then you
okay.
can open up your mic and just ask directly if we haven't covered them yet. So yeah, feel free to join in. Anything? No. Okay.
Were there questions in the chat? Or-
Yeah, I think we've covered the mostly. Yeah, there's question like you said, yeah, like the recurrent injuries of the ankles. Yeah, if that happens, yeah, of course it would disturb the energy of the lower dantian. Yeah, or it would the um but does it also show a weakness of the lower dantian?
You can't say that. You
Uh-huh.
can't say that. There is when there is a disturbance in the ankle and people still walk, you will see that there is a dysfunction in the lower jaw. But how it works out, you know, and never know. You
Hmm.
can't predict that. But
Okay.
definitely it influences the lower jaw function.
Okay. Um, there was one question. Uh how does the use of I guess recreational drugs influence
What
the
drugs?
recreational drugs, how does that influence like the movement of the Hund, for instance?
What are recreational drugs?
Uh, drugs, not pharmaceutical drugs,
Yeah,
but
yeah, 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 yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that these kind of drugs. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. How does that influence the Hun?
the Hund.
Yeah. Um, the Hun has to do with imaginations and dreams. So when people dream a lot, or they imagine a lot, or they feel connected to lots of visualizations, or they create different realities, which
Hmm.
mean that the Hun doesn't go back often in the night back to the liver. So there you see that the Hun becomes exhausted or is out of balance or loses this routing function. So the um, which point is that? Um, 1 second, I need to check that if I'm right. Um,
Mm.
hang on, otherwise I say something which is not right. Um, um, I can't find it, but I'm pretty sure about it that the Hun men, the Hun gate, bladder 47, yeah, that
Hmm.
roots the Hun, yeah, and it's a point which which gives you direction in life. It helps you to find your own direction. So when people try to find their direction in life through imaginations to new realities, it
Hmm.
unroots the Hun.
Hmm.
And then you don't know what's happening because it gives you more, it gives you maybe a happy feeling, but it really goes in all kind of different imagination and visualizations. And bladder 47, when it's the right time and you can find it in the pulse that that's needed, then you root the Hun and it roots it back into the liver in the night, but also it roots it to its relationship to the Po and its relationship to the Shen.
Hmm. So there's this importance of the Hun being rooted in the body. Um, so is sleepwalking, for instance, is that a problem with unrooted Hun?
In the beginning, yes, because in children, the Chinese often say the first 7 years is Po. Yeah, we are only body and instinctive. But I also have read that the first 7 years we are Hun as children.
Hmm.
Yeah, and often you see children that they sleepwalk. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's like the Hun is not settled yet, and so when it stays, it means that the Hun is not rooted. Yeah, that sleepwalking is definitely part of it. Yeah.
And then as a treatment principles, you would strengthen the yin, or how do you treat is except for bladder 47, but what's the treatment principle behind treating an unrooted Hun?
To first see that the Hun is an expression of the great movement wood.
Hmm.
The great movement wood is a consequence of the relationship of water and fire, as well great movement water and great movement fire, as well as the kidney and the heart and the bladder and the small intestine. Yeah. So you first look at the vertical axis, and the
Hmm.
balance within the vertical axis needs to be harmonized. And from there already you often see that that root aspect calms down a bit and
Okay.
is more rooted. And
Hmm.
then if the vertical axis is in one way or the other, you could look at many aspects, even stomach and spleen
Hmm.
have a vertical axis quality of fire and water. Yeah. So that also sometimes helps people to root them inside themselves, and from there the wood aspect can calm down. But if not, then you can go to the great movement wood or to wood related
Hmm.
channels and organs.
Okay. We've got about 10-15 minutes. I think we can do
There's
the
one
best.
person
Not
who raised their hand. She wants to ask a question. Arta wants
Arthur.
to.
Yeah,
Can you
Arthur,
open your
just come
microphone, Arta?
online. Just open your mic and ask your question. You have to open your mic. Oh, wait, maybe I can. I can't open you. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, because I've been unmuted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. So I want to continue this topic on Hun because it was very interesting to me always. And I know it's from a little bit different aspect. Maybe that the Hun is this spirit which can travel outside the body. And so my question is, what's your take on that? Can, especially in children, can Hun travel and not come back? Can some other Hun enters the body? Or it's strictly the aspect of person psychology and it's not exchangeable, let's put it this way.
Yeah. The Chinese are not precise about that because when they talk about ghosts, for instance, they always talk about the ghost related to the seven po. But there are also descriptions of that, especially the lower Dantian Hun is related to Hun that can travel outside, and especially when people die, can stay around, like the po, like that part that which is so much related to pleasure and fun and all these things and sex, etc., stays around, and the Chinese say that it can influence people around the grave or being around the dead people. That it when the Hun is open, then it could travel inside, and they have fear for that. I have no experience with that. I know it from what I've read. I know that some people in China are very afraid of it. I've never seen it. With the Po, I've seen it. With the Hun, I never saw that.
So
So
you mean that you've never seen somebody alive where you think that the Hun left and didn't come back?
yeah, or another Hun entered.
Okay.
I've
Okay.
never seen that. Or Po, I have seen that. Yeah,
Mhm. But
Okay.
what's your understanding? Is it possible? What I mean, we might not see it or we might not recognize it. We don't know. But this the idea of wandering Hun, which can during a night, especially in children with a predisposed psychological or genetic makeup, can travel outside the body, not just um, in the area. Supposedly, Hun is staying within certain distance and has this connection to the body, but some can just like let it go further. And then sometimes Hun, and why I'm asking, because I saw adults patients with which made me, I guess, start thinking about it. And I asked the question about usage of marijuana, um, who are like a daily heavy users of marijuana. And I know them from, for several maybe years, and I see myself a change, which I'm wondering, because to me, there's almost like a part of the Hun, or Hun is not belong to them anymore, if it makes sense.
it makes sense, but it's not because of the Hun left the body. When people
Well,
take drugs,
two different
yeah,
scenarios for
but when
children.
people take a lot of drugs, especially marijuana, I've seen that is that what happens in the Shen separates. And you feel in the pulse, you feel in the Shen pulse that the pulses separate. You feel two pulses. So it means that the earth quality of the heart, the earth quality of the Shen, which is there as well, is not strong enough to keep that together. And the Hun follows the Shen and directs the Shen. So the Hun, it definitely has a result within the Hun, but the use of drugs is much more. The relationship to the Hun is the imagination, the visualization, the belief in other realities. That is definitely related to Hun. But when you use quite a lot of marijuana or other drugs to calm yourself down, or to that you can deal with the world, or you like the feeling of it, when you do it a lot, then the Shen is impaired. And because of that, you see that the Hun also doesn't know how to deal with it anymore. But it's a Shen issue.
It's a Shen issue.
It's a Shen issue. Yeah.
And treating that, especially if the person says, I am not going to give up marijuana, I'm just not, it gives me such creativity. I live in Los Angeles, everybody crazy about to be very creative in some way. Um, but I see this Shen disturbance, I would say, leading from. So how would you address how would you approach Hun or Shen first and then
If
Hun?
people tell me, listen, I want to be treated because I don't feel healthy, but I can't stop using marijuana, and say, do you want to stop using marijuana? No, I don't want to stop using marijuana. I always tell them it's what I call the hammer on your head syndrome. If a person comes into the clinic and has a hammer in his hand and does like this again and again, and he tells me, doctor, I have pain in my head, can you stop the aching feeling I have in my head? What would be your first thing to say? Stop banging on your head, don't you? Yeah.
No,
If you don't stop banging, you can't cure.
hit harder.
Yeah, you can't cure the pain in your head. So
Mm.
I would say, listen, I would love to treat you to help you out, but I don't say you have to stop immediately. But if there's no incentive of stopping anyhow, then it's no use. It has no point to start treating, because what do? I allow you to use marijuana maybe because you feel better, but it is not healthy for you as it is now. You became ill from it, so and your spirit is ill. So I don't want to provide anything that it makes it worse. So if you want to stop it, then by all means I can see what we can do together. But otherwise I won't do that.
I see. And if they say, I would like to, then what would be your methodology to go Shen or Hun?
It's different in you can't say that it's no strict answer, but the first imbalance is usually in Shen, but that already often was already before the marijuana. So you usually do that together with the consultant, with the psychologist, or together. Yeah,
I
but it's
see.
usually a Shen issue first.
Okay. And if it's genetic, you can't consult much.
Then still you can do a lot. Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Is there any other
Okay.
question?
There were questions. I think one is a bit too much for today. That was about the yin yang depression formula that we know from Dr. Van Buren. And I think that might be a webinar in itself, but probably not. So we'll do that another time, hopefully. I think as such, we have covered question. I mean, it's getting late as well. I mean, there's always this question, but we will also be able to cover that in our next webinar when we talk about the next great movement. There's always this question of how we distinguish between great movement, stem, wood, great movement, wood, stem, wood, branch, wood, deep energy woods. Yeah, but that's more like a pulse diagnosis
Yeah,
question.
but I would like to say a few things about it. Not
Okay, good.
everything,
Yeah,
maybe just in short, because I get that question quite often.
yeah, okay.
First of all, when you talk about the great movement wood, it means that the great movements, they describe all cycles on Earth. So when you find wood on many places related to the great movement,
Hmm.
then you know it's a great movement wood. So if there's a lot of wood everywhere, usually it's not just only liver or just it's usually the great movement. If there's a lot of wood going on, if there's a lot of fire going on with people, for instance, stomach and fire, and there's a lot of fire going on, you can say that's the great movement fire, probably. But then it also has to be, for instance, in the stomach, or earth is too fiery, could be in the spleen, could
Hmm.
be in the liver. But
Hmm.
even outside of that, if there's a lot of fire, usually it's a great movement. But especially when you find it through the four possibilities, then you can say there's an imbalance in the great movement fire. Yeah.
Hmm.
And when you just feel fire, let's say in the liver, and nowhere else, there's just heat in the liver, and it goes together with the liver yin insufficiency,
Hmm.
and probably that is a liver fire, without that it is related to stomach and fire. Yeah.
Hmm.
But it could be still if it is an earth energy livers and also deep energy earth. But if it's, for instance, let's say in the lungs, then there's a lot of fire in the lungs. It can come from stomach and fire, co-cycle to the lungs, but it's also possible that it's just in the lungs because of pathogenic factor. Yeah. So you should always find the story behind it before you can't make a distinction otherwise. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Yeah, I think yeah, it's 6 o'clock, so or 5 to. So are there any more questions by anybody? Does anybody want to add something, ask something? No? Then we'll come to an end. Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed this webinar. Thank you, Johan, for your time. Oh, there's one question. No, it was just a thank you. Okay, great. So we'll finish and hopefully see you all next time again.
Great.
Okay. Thank you,
Bye.
Johan.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Regine, as well.
Thank you. You're welcome. And thank you everybody for being there.